I'm excited to be here. We're going to go live on IG and then we will be ready to start. I'm excited about tonight's topic. If you had a chance to read the description or the title, tonight we're saying Got Roots. And I want to have a conversation about just the growth process and how every single one that you go through is individualistic. There is no set way in which growth happens, because everybody has to walk a different path, right? So tonight I just kind of want to talk about that. And the one thing that I noticed was I would always make reference to this analogy. And then when I finally went back and I looked at it, I realized that I wasn't telling the story accurately. And I'm bringing that point out because it was something that I would always try to refer to when I was talking about the growth process and what it is that we have to go through and what we have to submit to. And it's just like a human, right? When we've been in a process for what we feel to be a sufficient amount of time, we will sometimes shortchange or shorten the process, if you will, because we feel we've been in it long enough to reap the benefits of that particular process. And that is sometimes a lot of what causes us to be in a process far longer than we need to be because we're not actually looking at it correctly. So tonight I want to reference the bamboo tree. How many of y'all have ever heard about the growth strategy when it comes to the bamboo tree? Anybody ever heard of it? It might be familiar to some, it might be old to others, but has anybody ever heard of the story of the bamboo tree by chance, the Chinese bamboo tree? No? Okay, so I want to talk about that particular story tonight, because it's a process of growth that is a very lengthy process, and I wasn't talking about it correctly. And so I was giving people what I thought was a word of encouragement about the bamboo tree, and I was telling it wrong. And it's important to tell a story accurately, because it will help us actually get the full picture. Okay, so here is the part that I want to talk about. So I would always tell people, oh, it's very similar to the bamboo tree. It's very much like the process, and there's all this stuff that happens underground, before you actually see the above ground results, if you will. But let's talk about it in actuality. So for the first year of a bamboo's growth, there is no visible sign of activity or development. Okay, so a farmer puts this seed into the ground, if you will, and for the first 12 months, 365 days, there is no sign that that seed is sprouting, that that seed is developing, that that seed will actually come up and produce what it was put into the ground to produce. Now, the reason why that's important is because there are often times when you see fruit from a tree that is planted in its same season, or at least within those first 12 months. So that's year one. Year two, same thing. You see absolutely nothing happening above ground. But that farmer is aware that they planted a bamboo tree. But if that farmer has not studied what that developmental process looks like, that farmer will possibly disrupt that bamboo's growth by digging it up or going to plant it up, right? Pluck it up. Third year, still nothing. So we are now 3 years in, and I don't see anything. I'm starting to wonder, is did I actually plant anything? Was it a dud? Like why am I not seeing anything? Year three, year four, nothing. So we have gone 4 years and we see absolutely nothing sprouting to show that what I sowed, what I put into the ground, is going to actually yield fruit. 4 years. It is at the end of the fourth year where something starts to happen, and come around the corner to the fifth year, we actually start to see something. And it almost seems like it's instantaneous. It's an overnight process where this thing that has been growing beneath ground for 4 years shows us why it took so long for us to see its manifestation or its growth. And it is said, now there are a couple different resources and they say similar things, but on average, what I am reading is that in that fifth year, when we finally see the growth, the Chinese bamboo tree grows nearly 80 to 90 feet within a 6 week period. So we have gone from seeing absolutely nothing for 4 consecutive years. And in year 5, this tree sprouts up and it is able to grow somewhere between 80 to 90 feet in 6 weeks. When I was telling that story, you guys, I kept saying, oh, it's in year 4. I would have been the farmer who disrupted the growth of the thing that I planted, caused it to be stunted because now I have plucked it up in year 4 when it really needed the 5th year to finish developing its complex root system. It needed to finish developing the thing that was going to be able to sustain it. Why is it imperative that we allow the developmental process to happen with the bamboo? We need it to happen because if we take it out prematurely, what it can become, well, it won't become because it has not finished its development. I'm saying all of that to say many of us are in a season where we have planted, where we have toiled, where we put so much into the soil, but we didn't recognize the value or the developmental process attached to what we put into the soil. And so if you're finding yourself somewhere in the season of trying to figure out, is what I planted a dud? Did what I plant actually, was it for me? Did I actually plant it? Did I not plant it correctly? What's happening? Because I'm not seeing anything. It's not until the 5th year. 5 is the number of grace. I look for revelation in any and everything that I study. 4 is the number of creation. So in the 4 years, 4, the number of creation, it is creating and it is developing what will be able to sustain it when it finally does grow. Now, they go on to talk about how in the 3rd and 4th summers, these trees sprout up and they grow exponentially and they stand neck and shoulders above the other trees that it's grown next to. Even though it seems like those trees grew and they showed fruit within its first season, that bamboo showed nothing. But when it finally was its turn, when it was finally time for it to rear its head, when it was finally time for it to make its debut, everything that we didn't see is what allows it to become what it is. And so for you who have toiled, who have labored, who have put in the work, and nobody really knows what's going on beneath surface for you. On the outside, you look stunted. On the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But when you finally are called on, when your name is finally chosen, everything that went into the development process now is able to withstand the platform that has been set aside for you. And it's hard. So for 4 years, the tree doesn't show signs of growth. For 4 years, we see nothing that has happened. What would have happened if that farmer went back up and dug that seed up every year? We would have just prolonged the process. So what are some of the things that you're agonizing over? What are some of the things that you're toiling with that you have the itch to go pluck up because you don't see the fruit? The thing says, had the farmer dug up the seed every year to see if it was growing, it would have stunted the bamboo's growth, right? It would not have become what it had the capacity to become because every year it was being tested, it was being toiled with, it was being moved, it was being put into new soil, it was put into a new environment and never had the opportunity to grow roots. I have decided I want to plant. Did I pick the easiest plant to care for? No. I sent my husband on a quest to find me a fiddle leaf fig tree. Because I was like, it's cute and that's what I want in my space. Now, the thing that's true about this particular tree, and why am I bringing up these things? Because I want to get to something else in this lesson, but it's very symbolic about being a tree that's planted by still waters. It's really about a tree that's being planted in a soil that its roots are allowed to grow into a complex root system to sustain what that tree can ultimately become. Okay, so I had to do some research on this plant that I wanted in my house. It's a fiddle leaf fig. It is beautiful. It is known to grow in Africa and like a tropical environment. So it seems like it would make sense and it would grow well in Texas, right? Because we have tropical weather. However, a fiddle leaf fig is very temperamental. And in reading about how they adjust to their environment, it is said that they need to have a lot of indirect sunlight. But once they are positioned, you need to leave them there because they do not do well in being shifted or moved. They get acclimated to the position that they've been put in and then they flourish. But before they do, when they get into their new environment and they have to get acclimated, they tend to shed leaves. They tend to drop a few leaves. Some of their leaves drop, they turn brown. There's a growth process. There's a period in which they have to get acclimated with the space that they are in. It has taken us a while to get acclimated to the season we've all been called to walk through. It didn't matter what was going on before March. Whatever was going on had to stand subject to the shift that this entire country went through. Your dreams, your vision boards, everything that you planned became subject to the season that the entire world was being called to walk through. We walked through it in phases, but we all had to walk through it, right? And so now we are in a season where we have to get planted and we have to become firm in our belief and we have to stand on what we know we have developed strength for, what we have developed knowledge for, what we have built up resilience for, and stand flat footed in the truth of what we know, because we can get through this season, but we do have to submit to the process of this season. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And so I want to talk about three main points, because you guys know I am a stickler about being on time, but I don't believe in meeting and not giving tools, because when you walk away, there should be something that you can begin to apply. Okay. So lessons of the bamboo. One of the main lessons that I like for us to talk about is that roots matter. Why? Because the bamboo grows and develops for 4 long years so it can support the entire structure and weight above ground when the day comes. Let me say that again. The bamboo grows and develops for 4 long years so that it can support the entire structure and the weight above ground when the day comes. It may seem like people are going past you. It may seem like you've been overlooked. It may seem like people don't understand the worth or the treasure that has been planted in you. Fret not. You are developing a root system that will be able to withstand the entire structure. What does entire structure mean in this sense? Everything that you've been called and purposed to be. Everything that has been planted in you to serve purpose in this earth. You have to have roots that can support that, the structure and the weight of that, because to walk in the fullness of who you are is a weighty thing. But if you don't have the roots to sustain it, you will become wayward and you will go with whatever direction the wind takes you, and you'll be flighty. But if you've got roots, you can withstand. So you've got to have roots. Becoming successful at doing the right thing. I'm sorry, that's the wrong part. You've got to be able to survive the harsh conditions. Let me go back. It is also important to grow roots because you need to be able to survive the harsh conditions. That bamboo grows roots that enables them to withstand harsh conditions year after year. It has the flexibility to bend but not break. All of that happens outside of one's eyesight. It's happening behind closed doors. It's happening beneath soil. We don't know what that bamboo is going to be able to withstand, but all of that is embedded in what it is cultivating beneath ground. Do not worry if you don't look like what they look like. Do not worry if they don't see who you've been called to become. Be that anyway, even in the shadows of the soil, even in what they think is your grave. Because a garden can look like a grave or a desert, or it can look like a grave, or it can look like a garden. But without knowing what it is, we'll trample all over it. We can call it a graveyard, or we can call it a garden. But when things start to sprout above ground, the truth of who you are is revealed. Yes? Small daily acts. The other thing that is true about the bamboo, that farmer has to be diligent. It can never cease to water the soil. It can never cease to till the ground. It can never cease to foster and be mindful of the environment. Every day that farmer has to go out and water what it doesn't see developing, what it doesn't see sprouting fruit. It goes out in faith saying, I'm going to water this thing and I'm going to do it diligently and I'm going to do it daily. Because what happens is we feel like if we do something good, every now and then we should yield fruit from it. And that's not the case. You have to become deliberate about doing a good thing consistently. Merely practicing every day will not make you better. You have to be deliberate about the skill set that you're going to develop. So if you practice this today and that tomorrow, you are not actually developing and honing in on that skill. You've got to be intentional. So what is it that you are hoping that this season is going to yield? What is it that you're hoping that this season is going to bring to you? Are you being deliberate every day? If you say, I'm going to be consistent in my meditation, are you carving out adequate time at the top of your day or the end of the day to make sure that that happens? Do you make sure that you shut off everything that's going to serve as a distraction so that you can actually do what it is that you said you wanted to do? Be it 10 minutes, be it 5 minutes, be it an hour. As long as you do it daily and you are deliberate, that is where you see the betterment of it. That's where you see the fruit of it. Not to just say, oh, I did a good thing on Monday, so I should get something good on Friday. What exactly are you hoping? What is the rate of return that you're hoping for? And is it matching your investment? That farmer, could you imagine if you were the first bamboo farmer? If you were the first person to do it, you look crazy, right? You go out for 4 years and you water the same plot. I would assume had that been 4 years, you would have needed to mark it by something, right? You need a landmark to reference because there's no sprouting, there's no budding above ground. So we've got to mark this thing so I know where to get back to it. But if you're going back to the same place at the same time every day, it becomes so ingrained in you that you actually no longer need a marker. This is the spot that I water. This is the place that I sow. This is the place where I am deliberate in my actions, and I do it daily because I know that what I put into the soil will yield fruit. And if it's taking this long to yield it, then something magnificent, something monumental must be coming out of this. I'm telling you guys, I've done things for decades and not seen the fruit and been like, well, what is it? What's missing? And then the deliberate small thing daily, when it was time for the day to come, for the thing to sprout, it sprouted, and it only became what it is because of what I sowed, even when I didn't see the sprouting above ground. So what is it that you have to give your deliberate attention to, guys? What is it? Listen, it's not what you do every day. It's what you do every day that matters, not what you do every once in a while. And that's the part that I just kind of want to make sure that we understand. It's not a matter that you did it every once in a while and you feel like you should get a pat on your back. It's a thing that you are consistent with. It's a thing that you have as a non-negotiable. It's a thing that you don't waver on. Okay? So let's do it, and let's do it together. The last point. So I've said we need to do what? Our roots matter. We have to have small acts daily. And then finally, we have to have persistence, patience, and faith. Some dreams take months or even years to accomplish. But if you're starting a goal today and you don't see the results, or you don't see immediate results, will you try again tomorrow? If you're starting something now and you don't see immediate results, like everybody publicizes on social media platforms, will you try again tomorrow? Will you persist beyond your fatigue? Will you persist beyond a slow process? Will you persist? If you've got a word hanging over your life, if you know this is what you are purposed to do and you don't see an immediate result, will you try again tomorrow? Will you put your hands to the plow and not let go? Will you put in the work? Will you do it when you got to do it by yourself? Will you do it when they laugh in your face? Will you do it when they talk about you? Will you do it when they slander your name? Will you do it anyway? Will you do it when it's hard to believe? Will you do it when you're just like, I don't feel like maybe I wasn't actually supposed to do this? Will you do it past self-doubt? Will you persist beyond self-doubt? Don't let your moods, circumstances, or people derail you. Emotions change on the fly. People change on the fly. People are committed to what is mutually beneficial. And I want to say this to people who are starting new things, or who have launched businesses, or whatever your lane is. I want to say this to you, and it's not shade, it's the truth. People are committed to what it is that you're giving as long as they benefit from it. When it's no longer what they need, or it's not mutually beneficial for them, they will unsubscribe. And that is okay, because maybe you were only called to be in their life for a season. And when that season exhausts, It's fine. It may come full circle. And what you sold into them years ago may come back as a just reward to you. You never know. But don't take it personally when people unsubscribe to what it is that you're doing. It might not be the season that they need what you have to offer. But who's to say that it won't come back and they may need what you have to offer again? Don't take it personally, because when there's one that doesn't need you, there's always somebody else who does. So all I will say to you is keep rendering that which you've been called to render, whether you have an amen corner or not, whether the person who you felt should be your greatest supporter. If you thought that, maybe you thought they were your farmer, maybe you thought that they were called to water. But listen, even the Bible says that one plants, one waters, but God gives the increase. So the increase is not coming from him who waters or him who planted. The increase is coming from God. So just be cognizant of that, because sometimes it's hard and we take it personally and we feel like people should be for us what we expect from them. But you got to let people be who they are, whatever that is in whatever season. Okay. Now, there is one particular scripture that I want us to look at, and then I want you to take the time to journal about. And I'm going to read it in two versions because I really want us to dissect this particular scripture. And so when I wanted to talk about, okay, now that we've talked about the bamboo tree and we talk about the symbolisms that are typically outlined in the Bible, a lot has to do with trees and water and bearing of fruit. Okay, and so the particular passage that I want to look at tonight is found in Jeremiah chapter 17, and I'm going to read verses 5 through 8. And it says, "Thus saith the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in and relies on mankind, making weak, faulty humans flesh his strength, and whose mind and heart are turned away from the Lord. Cursed is the man who relies and trusts in mankind, making weak, faulty human flesh his strength, and whose mind and heart are turned away from him." Verse 6. "For he will be like a shrub in a parched desert, and he will not see prosperity when it comes, but shall live in rocky places of the wilderness, in the uninhabited salt land." So back to that bamboo tree. If that farmer would have plucked it up, if it would have relied on what he thought that the developmental process should look like, instead of relying on what this particular plant knows to do, its innate ability to grow and develop, then it would have what? It would be a shrub. It would have been stunted. It wouldn't have grown. Verse 7, "Blessed is the man who believes, trusts, and relies on the Lord, and whose hope and confident expectation is in the Lord." I don't have to rely on human. I don't have to rely on my own understanding, but my hope and confident expectation is what is in the Lord. Why? "For he will be nourished like a tree that is planted by waters, that spreads out its roots by the river, and will not fear when heat comes. But its leaves will be green and moist, and will be anxious and will not be anxious and concerned in the year of drought, nor will it stop bearing fruit." I want to read that again. "For he will be well nourished like a tree planted by the waters, that seed spread out by the river, and will not fear. And when he comes, his leaves will be green and moist. He will not be anxious or concerned in the year of drought. He will not stop bearing fruit." The bamboo grows. Period. It didn't say that the drought wiped it out. It didn't say that the heat causes it to be stunted. It says that it grows on the 50th year, in the year of grace. So even in drought, even in uncertain times, even in famine, he who trusts and has confident expectation in the Lord will be like a tree whose roots spread to the river, and you will never cease to bear fruit. You'll never cease to bear fruit. There's another translation that reads this way, and I love it very much. It says, "They are like trees planted along the riverbank, with roots that reach into the water. Such trees are not bothered by heat or worried by long months of droughts. Their leaves stay green. They never stop producing fruit." You have got to be like that. You have to anchor your hope and your expectation in the one who will nourish regardless of what's going on around you, because what has been planted in you is being cultivated for a set time, and when the day comes, your leaves will stay green, and you will never stop producing fruit. And fruit varies in size, fruit production varies in season. So whatever the fruit is of the season that you are called to will be the fruit that you produce. So do not be anxious when you are no longer producing lemons, and maybe your time to produce fruits and or produce oranges. And when those orange seasons have gone, you may be called to produce something else, or you may be, you know what I mean? Whatever the season is that you've been called to, you will produce the fruit adequate and appropriate for that particular season. And so, do you not perceive it? God took me to that scripture this week, and I about turned circles. He took me to Isaiah 43, and he said, do you not perceive it? I'm doing a new thing. I'm doing a new thing right before you in the wilderness. I am making streams in the wilderness. I am making streams in the wilderness. I am nourishing you even in what looks to be uncertain and unprecedented times. When the world seems like it is looking for something true, I can anchor my confident hope and expectation in he who created and numbered my days. And so I will look to him to do the new thing in the season that looks unfamiliar to me. And sometimes you're going to be the one who walks into that new season by yourself, with no path, with no roadmap, with no rule book to follow. You've got to create it, and you've got to create it according to what you've been developing beneath surface. So don't shortchange, and don't feel like your process is in vain. Don't feel like everything that you created is for naught. Don't feel like, well, it didn't produce here, so that means I did it for nothing. Or I see nothing above ground, so that means I throw the whole thing away. No, it may be for an appointed time, but when the time comes, you'll be ready. And I may have said this a million times before, and it's nothing new, but the thing that I do know is that sometimes you need to hear what you know again, because what you know sometimes gets blurred over by what you see. Sometimes what you know needs to be called back to the forefront. That's why it says what? Hearing, faith comes by hearing, and hearing comes by the word of God. That's why we have to hear it again. We have to hear it again, because when we hear it, even when the life doesn't align with what we hear it, and faith is reignited, and we walk in again what we know as truth. And so in this season, maybe you're in year 1, maybe you're in year 4, wherever you are in the beneath surface developmental process, don't discount your process. Don't discount it. We've got to learn how to wait well, and we've got to be in the environment where we will be replenished, where our soil will be nurtured, where our farmers, those who watch over our soul, will pour into us, and they are cognizant of the time and season that we are in, so that we can get to what we have all been working for. Fret not. Be not weary in well doing. And I know it's like, Jimmy, look great. You're going to go there. I am, because sometimes you don't even remember that it's in well-doing. You're tired, but you're doing well. You're tired, but you haven't been defeated. You're tired, but look at how many lives you're still impacting. It's okay to take rest. It's okay to get replenished. You have to. You have to take a moment where you're poured into, but you don't quit. You don't quit. You commit to the time and the season that you've been appointed to. And when the day comes, when they see how far you come. And I want to say this, if you're doing it to prove other people wrong, we're doing it for the wrong reason. Everything that we do should be so that we ensure that our life brings glory to him. It should always be a reflection of him through us in the earth realm. It should never be, I told you so, I proved you wrong. If we keep our attention and our focus on he who is working through us, everything that he is birthing through you will make you rich, and it will add no sorrow with it. Why? Because the gift of the Lord, that maketh one rich, and they add no sorrow with it. When we're experiencing sorrow, it's customarily because of what we manufactured at our own expense, because we felt like what God was doing was taking too long. So how are your roots? Are you staying in place? Are you planted? Are you discouraged by the journey? It's okay. We have all been there. We're human. We're human. But when you recognize that it's this process, just like we have an expectation when it comes to how long it takes for a human to birth a child, it takes an elephant way longer, and they can have delayed gestation. It takes a bamboo 4 years. Whoever you are and wherever you fall in the process, you have to submit to that process. My process is not going to look like yours, and yours will not look like mine, but we can all be submitted to our individual processes, our individual developmental stages, so that we can all show up at the appointed time. Could you just imagine if everybody would just show up at their appointed time? Could you just imagine how impactful and how many lives we could touch across the globe if we would all submit to our appointed time? If we would all just let our roots settle in so that it can anchor and hold that which will develop above ground. Could you just imagine what that would look like? Don't jump out of season. Don't pluck up before it's time. Don't allow anybody to pluck you up before it's time because they have need of you. Stay in position. Let your roots settle so that you can show up at your appointed time. Because I'm telling you, I'm watching people I know who have toiled for years walk into winning seasons, and nothing makes my heart glad more than to see somebody who I know fought for somebody who bend but didn't break, to see somebody who cried but they refused to throw in the towel, or they let me throw it back in their face because they threw it at me. I'm watching people win, and you are not exempt. If you stay submitted to your process, when your appointed time comes, we will then clap for you. We will then cheer and support you. But if you're in development, fret not. Fret not. We're not all called to the same thing. We're not all called to the same people. We're not all called to the same environments. That's why there's no need to compete, because it doesn't even matter if we're saying the same thing. Our voices are assigned to a particular tribe. So whatever you're assigned to, whatever you've been called to, show up at your appointed time so that we can actually do what we've been called to do, which is to become God's footprint in his arms in the earth, so that we can compel men to come unto him. Let's lift him up and let him do what he needs to do. I'm not trying to be anybody's God. I'm not trying to be anybody's critic. And let me just say this as a side note: be careful when you are critiquing a process that you are not called to, because even if we are going in the same direction, even if it looks like we have the same assignment, everybody's process is individualistic and everybody's steps are uniquely defined because it's their footprint that is being called to walk it. So even if we both do X, we both do it, but we do it differently because we do it according to the mandate that is on our lives. Be careful. Watch how you put your mouth on people. Watch how you even silently critique, because nothing is going on that God is not aware of. So be mindful. And if you can't understand their process, that's okay. But you never have the right to critique it. You never have the right to tear them down. Either pour into them or step to the side so that somebody who has the capacity to pour can pour, so that they can be nourished in their seasons of development, so that they can grow and become all that they have been sent to this earth to become. I truly hope that something was said tonight that resonates with you and is a word of encouragement, because we're all being developed in one way or another. And development, I do want to say this. I keep saying I'm closing. I feel like a preacher. He could be like, this is my close, this is my close. But I have I have one more thing that I want to say. And it is this: that in our process and in our development, we have to hone in to what we know is true. Because chaos is the tactic of the enemy to derail us. But if we can hone in to what we know is true, and we can lock in to what we have been sent to do, because we've identified purpose, we're walking in the truth of that. Even when the lie of I'm not good enough presents itself, you can hone into what you know is true. When the lie of you're inadequate, you're an has-been, your season has passed, when those lies show up, you can meditate on what you know to be true. You can speak the truth to the lie and move in the direction of what you've been called to. So even in the process, commit to what is true. And we can commit to what is true when we constantly hear truth. So you're going to have to speak truth over you. You're going to have to be surrounded with people who can speak truth into you. Truth is what defines dismantles the attacks of the enemy. Truth is what sends him high, telling up out of here. But if you don't know the truth, it's hard to speak the truth. And if you cannot speak the truth, you will be stunted by somebody else's vision or expectation of what you are to do. So I love you guys so, so very much. I really hope that you'll take this and that you'll meditate on it and just I do some self-evaluation. Where am I in my season of development? Am I committing to it? Do I know the long term goal? Have I locked in on what I know that I'm working toward? So, in the day where it's harder to do it, in the day where I feel like it's all been for naught, I can regurgitate truth and continue moving towards my target. I want you guys to do that. I want you guys to hone in. I want you to know that I love you, that I'm rooting for each one of you. I'm your cheerleaders. There are days that I have to take off because life is interesting with homeschool and work and all of the things. But I may not say everything audibly, but I do want you to know that I see, that I encourage, and I'm happy about what I'm seeing in the lives of those that I've watched toil, and it is their winning season and they deserve every bit of it, and so do you. But the only way to reap the reward is to get to the finish line. And this is my final point. And going through development doesn't always mean that you're starting over per se. Development is to go from stage to stage to stage, right? And so when you have successfully completed level 1, you qualify for level 2. And on level 2, yes, there will be some things about level 1 that will be foundational, but there will be a lot of things about level 2 that you have yet to learn. And so if you're in the level 2 and you feel like, I feel like I've gone backwards, no, you're in a season or you're in a phase that is unfamiliar to you, and you've got to now develop even more than what you had to in level 1 because you've been called to higher. And so there's some of you who feel like, well, I felt like I mastered that and now I'm starting over. No, you've graduated to the next phase, right? You have to graduate elementary to be eligible for junior high school or middle school, right? It's middle school and then junior high and then high school, right? But you've got to have a level of mastery of one thing because before you graduate to the next. And so if you feel maybe uncomfortable or you feel like you're boxed in or you feel confined, it quite possibly is a sign that you've mastered this level and it's now time to subscribe to the next. And you're going to have to be challenged and pushed and pulled and stretched, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to master that. And then when you master that, you go to the next and you go to the next. That is how you develop, and that is how the above ground growth is supported, by mastering the development, submitting to the development, not tapping out and not feeling like you're a failure, but understanding that you're going from glory to glory, from faith to faith, that you are being expanded, that you are being stretched, that you are being established. And when you have been established and when you have been justified and you've been appointed, the above ground growth is everybody's to watch and yours to enjoy. I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful and happy Thursday night. Mwah! Bye.